this episode, we're going to make governance routines feel practical and obvious, because routines are what turn good intentions into consistent AI security decisions. When beginners hear routine, they sometimes picture tedious meetings, but a routine is simply a repeatable way to make sure important decisions happen the same way every time, even when people are busy or when teams change. AI systems create lots of decision points, from choosing use cases to approving data to monitoring outputs. And if each team makes those decisions differently, you end up with uneven safety. Uneven safety is dangerous because it only takes one weak spot for serious harm to occur, like leaking sensitive data, deploying a model without proper review, or failing to notice drift until customers complain. A strong governance program uses routines to keep decision-making predictable, accountable, and defensible, which helps both security and business speed. By the end, you should be able to describe the core routines that keep AI security decisions consistent and understand why each routine exists. Before we continue, a quick note. This audio course is a companion to our course companion books. The first book is about the exam and provides detailed information on how to pass it best. The second book is a Kindle-only ebook that contains 1,000 flashcards that can be used on your mobile device or Kindle. Check them both out at cyber.author.me in the Bare Metal Study Guide series. A useful starting point is recognizing what routines are trying to prevent, because that makes them easier to remember. They prevent bypass, meaning teams skipping review because they do not know the process or because the process feels arbitrary. They prevent inconsistency, meaning similar systems get different treatment depending on who built them, which creates unfair risk and confusion. They prevent loss of memory, meaning the organization forgets why a decision was made and cannot defend it later. They also prevent slow chaos, where everyone debates decisions from scratch each time because there is no established path. In real organizations, these failure modes are common, especially when new technology spreads quickly. AI governance routines are basically guardrails for human behavior, because humans are the ones making choices about how AI is used. When routines are well designed, they make the safe choice the easy choice. One of the most important routines is intake, which is the repeatable way new AI use cases enter the governance process. Intake is not about blocking innovation. It is about making sure the organization has visibility and a basic understanding of what is being proposed. A good intake routine captures the purpose of the system, who owns it, what data it will use, who the users are, and what impact the outputs could have. Beginners should notice that this is mostly plain language information, not deep technical detail. The routine also includes initial classification, meaning deciding whether the use case is low, medium, or high risk, so the organization knows how much review is needed. Without intake, AI projects appear in the wild, and governance only discovers them after problems occur. With intake, governance becomes proactive, and proactive is always cheaper and safer than reactive. Exam questions that ask how to prevent unmanaged AI use are often pointing at an intake routine and inventory linkage. Closely related is the risk tiering routine, which is how the organization decides what level of oversight each AI system requires. Risk tiering is a routine because it must be applied consistently, or else teams will argue that their system should be treated as low risk even when the impact is serious. Tiering criteria often include the type of decision the system influences, the sensitivity of the data, the scale of deployment, and the potential for harm if outputs are wrong or unfair. For beginners, it helps to think of tiering like airport security, where some situations require more checks because the consequences are higher. High-risk uses may require deeper assessments, stronger evidence, and more frequent monitoring, while lower-risk uses can move faster with lighter review. This routine protects the business by keeping review proportional, which maintains speed where it is safe. It also protects governance credibility because teams can see that the process is fair and consistent. On exams, when you see a question about balancing speed and safety, risk tiering is often part of the correct reasoning. Another essential routine is the review and approval checkpoint routine, which defines when a system must pause for governance decisions. These checkpoints often align to the life cycle, such as before using sensitive data, before deploying to production, and before major changes. The routine should clarify who approves at each checkpoint, what evidence is required, and what outcomes are possible, such as approve, approve with conditions, or require remediation before proceeding. Beginners sometimes assume approvals are a single final gate, but in AI governance, the strongest programs use multiple checkpoints because risk emerges at different times. For example, data decisions happen early and deployment decisions happen later, and both require accountability. Checkpoints also prevent the common problem of trying to review everything at the last minute, when pressure is highest and changes are hardest. When exam questions ask what should happen before deployment or before expanding use, they are often testing whether you recognize the need for a formal checkpoint with required evidence. A predictable checkpoint routine is what makes governance a real system instead of an informal conversation. Documentation and decision recording is another routine that keeps decisions defensible, and it should be treated as a normal part of the process rather than an extra burden. When a governance group approves a use case, or approves a data source, or accepts residual risk, that decision should be recorded along with the rationale. The key is not writing long essays, but capturing what was decided, who decided it, and what conditions were attached. This matters because AI systems can change over time, and when behavior shifts, people need to know what assumptions were made originally. Documentation also supports audits, contract obligations, and internal learning because it allows the organization to demonstrate responsible behavior. Beginners may think documentation is only for compliance, but it also helps operations because incident response depends on knowing what is supposed to be true. When questions mention regulators, contracts, or proving conformity, the exam often rewards answers that include decision records and evidence routines. Consistency is not only about doing the same actions, it is also about being able to show what you did. A powerful routine that connects governance to day-to-day operations is periodic review, which is the scheduled check that systems still meet expectations. AI systems can drift, data sources can change, business use can expand, and regulations can evolve, so a one-time approval is not enough. A periodic review routine might include reassessing risk tiering, checking that owners are still assigned, confirming that monitoring is functioning, and verifying that changes were approved properly. Beginners should see periodic review as routine maintenance, like checking the brakes on a car even if the car seems to run fine. Without periodic review, small problems can accumulate until they become incidents. Periodic review also keeps the inventory accurate, because systems that are retired or replaced must be updated in records. Exam questions that ask how to keep governance effective over time often point to this kind of routine. It is one of the clearest signs of mature program management. Change control is another routine that keeps decisions consistent, especially because AI systems evolve more frequently than many traditional systems. Change control means defining what counts as a meaningful change, who must approve it, what testing or review is required, and how the change is documented. Meaningful changes might include new data sources, model updates, prompt or instruction changes that alter behavior, or expanded access to new user groups. Beginners sometimes assume a change is harmless if it seems small, but in AI, even small changes can shift outputs in surprising ways. A routine ensures that changes are not applied casually and that the organization can trace when behavior changed and why. This is important for both safety and evidence, because if a system causes harm, the organization must be able to show what changed and what controls were checked. When exam questions involve unexpected behavior after an update, a good answer often includes change control and revalidation routines. Consistent change control reduces the odds of accidental risk. A governance program also needs an exception handling routine, because real organizations face situations where standard rules cannot be followed perfectly. Exceptions might be requested when a team needs speed, when a system has unusual constraints, or when business priorities demand temporary flexibility. The danger is that exceptions can become loopholes if they are informal or permanent. A strong routine requires exceptions to be documented, time-bound, approved by appropriate authority, and monitored for risk. Beginners should understand that allowing exceptions is not a sign of weakness, it is a sign of realism, but only if exceptions are controlled. This routine also supports fairness across teams, because it prevents special treatment without accountability. Exam questions sometimes test whether you will allow risky shortcuts, and a mature response is to use a controlled exception process rather than pretending exceptions never happen. This keeps governance aligned with business reality while still protecting the organization. Communication routines are often overlooked, but they are crucial for consistency because people cannot follow a process they do not understand. Communication routines include regular updates to stakeholders, clear guidance for how to submit use cases, and clear explanations of what decisions mean for teams. They also include escalation routines, so people know how to raise concerns or report unexpected behavior without fear or confusion. For beginners, it helps to think of communication as part of control because ambiguity leads to inconsistent actions. A simple example is acceptable use guidance for employees, which helps prevent risky behavior like feeding sensitive data into systems without approval. Another example is providing clear timelines and expectations for governance reviews, which reduces frustration and bypass attempts. When governance communication is clear, teams treat it as a reliable service rather than a barrier. Exam questions that involve confusion, inconsistency, or bypass often have answers that strengthen communication and clarity. Monitoring and incident response routines connect governance to real-world risk because they define what happens when something goes wrong. Monitoring routines establish what signals are watched, how often they are reviewed, and what thresholds trigger action. Incident response routines establish who is notified, how evidence is captured, what containment actions are allowed, and how decisions are documented. AI adds unique incident patterns, like harmful outputs, unexpected data exposure through responses, or model behavior changes after updates. Governance routines ensure these scenarios are anticipated and that response is coordinated rather than improvised. Beginners should understand that incidents are not only technical failures, they can be decision failures, like deploying a high-impact system without proper assessment. A routine makes response consistent, which reduces harm and improves trust. The exam often rewards answers that include preparedness and evidence capture, because those elements are what make an organization defensible after an event. As we wrap up, governance routines are the repeatable habits that keep AI security decisions consistent, accountable, and defensible across the entire organization. Intake routines create visibility and prevent unmanaged AI use. Risk tiering routines keep oversight proportional, and review checkpoints ensure key decisions happen at the right times with the right evidence. Documentation routines preserve decision memory. Periodic review routines keep systems aligned over time, and change control routines prevent surprise risk from updates and drift. Exception handling routines allow flexibility without creating loopholes. Communication routines make the process understandable and predictable, and monitoring and incident response routines ensure the organization can detect and handle problems responsibly. For a beginner, the main idea is that routines are not bureaucracy for its own sake. They are how organizations create reliability at scale. When you can picture these routines as practical guardrails that help the business move safely, you will recognize why Domain 1 emphasizes them and why so many exam questions reward answers that build repeatable, consistent governance behavior.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit DailyCyber.News.